Imagine you are in the middle of a passionate night with your partner, but there is one massive problem. Your entire extended family, your neighbors, and the village elder are sleeping literally 5 feet away from you. For 99% of human history, this absolute nightmare was just a standard Tuesday night. Welcome to the incredibly awkward, utterly fascinating reality of ancient human intimacy. We modern humans cherish our privacy like it is oxygen. We have locking doors, soundproof walls, and noise-canceling headphones just to avoid hearing our roommates chew. But for around 300,000 years, the concept of a private bedroom simply did not exist. Early humans lived in tight-knit hunter-gatherer bands consisting of 15 to 50 individuals. You survived together. You hunted together. You ate together. And yes, you slept in a giant human pile for warmth. Physical space was not a luxury. It was a deadly risk. Wandering off alone into the dark meant you were probably going to become a midnight snack for a hungry predator. So, how on earth did couples manage to do the deed without getting a standing ovation from the tribe? The answer reveals a psychological trick so deeply ingrained in us that you probably still use it today. But before we reveal that ancient hack, you need to understand how primitive society viewed personal space. They didn't. In fact, anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies noted something truly shocking. They literally have no word for privacy in their vocabulary. To them, being alone was not a relaxing retreat. It was a terrifying isolation. Isolation meant vulnerability, starvation, and inevitable death. Therefore, being surrounded by people 24/7 was the ultimate comfort blanket. However, biological urges wait for no one, not even a crowded cave. Couples had to get incredibly creative. The first strategy our ancestors employed was the masterful art of timing. Nighttime was the prehistoric equivalent of drawing the curtains when the fire died down and darkness consumed the camp. A cloak of invisibility fell over the tribe. Sure, everyone was still physically touching, but darkness provided crucial psychological privacy. It is the same reason you feel slightly less embarrassed doing something weird in a pitch-black room. But what if the mood struck during the day? This brings us to strategy number 2, calculated distance. Couples would casually stroll away from the main camp. They wouldn't go too far because, again, wild predators love a romantic couple on a secluded stroll. Just 50 feet away, hidden behind some thick bushes or rocks, was usually enough. It was the ancient version of sneaking off to the bathroom at a crowded party. Yet, even with timing and distance, sometimes things happened right in the middle of the camp. And this leads us to the most mind-blowing tactic of all, a social contract that shaped human evolution. The tribe collectively mastered the art of intentional ignorance. If a couple was getting intimate, everyone else simply pretended they were deaf and blind. Nobody stared, nobody whispered, and absolutely nobody offered critiques. It was an unspoken rule of mutual respect that held prehistoric society together. Think about the last time you were in a public restroom. You can hear the person in the next stall. They can hear you, but you both pretend you are alone in the universe. That intense, awkward silence is the exact same social protocol our ancestors invented. They granted each other mental space when physical space was completely impossible. But wait, what about the bathroom situation? If you think sneaking away for romance was hard, imagine dealing with daily digestive needs without plumbing. Early humans did not have designated outhouses or porcelain thrones. When nature called, you simply walked a few dozen yards downwind from the camp. You did your business in broad daylight, fully visible to anyone who happened to glance your way. Did it feel intrusive by our modern, overly sanitized standards? Absolutely. It sounds like a literal nightmare for someone with a shy bladder. But once again, the golden rule of intentional ignorance saved the day. Nobody followed you, nobody watched you, and everyone gave you the illusion of privacy. This unwritten code of conduct was the invisible wall that protected human dignity for millennia. But as you will soon see, everything changed when we finally learned how to build actual walls. And tragically, this incredible invention might be the very reason you feel lonely today. Around 10,000 years ago, humanity made a massive mistake called the agricultural revolution. We stopped chasing mammoths and started planting crops. Farming required us to stay in one place, which meant we had to build permanent structures. For the first time in the history of our species, we invented the solid door. It was a revolutionary concept, a physical barrier separating you from the eyes of your neighbors. Suddenly, you could close a piece of wood and magically disappear from society. However, early houses were still just single-room dwellings. Entire families still cooked, ate, and slept in one tiny smoke-filled room. Archaeological evidence from medieval Europe shows that a whole family would share one massive bed. The idea of children having their own separate bedrooms is shockingly recent. It did not become a widespread cultural norm until the late 19th century. For most of history, having your own room was the ultimate flex of the ultra-wealthy. Only kings, queens, and wealthy lords could afford the luxury of solitude. The peasants were still huddled together, sharing body heat and pretending not to hear their parents. But as civilization industrialized and wealth grew, walls became much cheaper. Houses grew larger, rooms multiplied, and the concept of personal space became a fundamental human right. We built tall fences around our yards, strong locks on our doors, and complex passwords on our phones. We successfully engineered a world where you can go days without ever making eye contact with another human. You can order groceries without speaking, work from home without socializing, and exist in a perfectly isolated bubble. We finally achieved the absolute privacy our ancestors could only dream of. But here is the twisted irony of our modern success story. We got exactly what we wanted, and it is actively destroying our mental health. Many psychologists argue a fascinating, deeply controversial point. They suggest that our modern obsession with privacy is actually a symptom of toxic individualism. For hundreds of thousands of years, our brains evolved to thrive in a constant state of social connection. Your identity was entirely tied to your specific role within the tribe. You were a hunter, a gatherer, a mother, a storyteller. You were a piece of a larger, breathing organism. Now, you are just an isolated individual trapped inside a quiet concrete box. We traded the messy, loud, intimate warmth of the tribe for the sterile comfort of a private bedroom. And the psychological cost of this unprecedented trade has been absolutely astronomical. Today, we are facing a global epidemic of loneliness that is literally killing us. Studies show that chronic isolation is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We feel anxious, depressed, and disconnected, despite being more digitally connected than ever before. We have built massive fortresses to keep others out, and now we are trapped inside them. Think about the modern dating scene compared to our ancestors. A prehistoric human just had to make eye contact across the fire and casually stroll into the bushes. Today, you have to swipe left 1,000 times on a glowing screen while sitting alone in your locked apartment. We have commodified intimacy and placed it entirely behind paywalls and physical barriers. Our ancestors didn't need to swipe right. They just needed to rely on the polite ignorance of their peers. By isolating ourselves, we have completely forgotten how to coexist with the chaotic reality of other humans. We get incredibly annoyed if someone stands too close to us in line at the grocery store. We complain if a neighbor's dog barks or if we hear footsteps from the apartment right above us. We have become utterly hypersensitive to the mere existence of others around us. This emotional fragility is a direct result of having way too much privacy. When you control your environment completely, any intrusion feels like a massive violation. But to a prehistoric human, an intrusion was just called everyday life. They were emotionally resilient because they strictly had to be. They learned to find inner peace while surrounded by constant outer chaos. They cultivated a strong mental sanctuary because a physical one was entirely out of the question. Perhaps the secret to happiness isn't building thicker walls, but learning how to finally tear them down. We need to relearn the ancient art of communal living without losing our sense of self. We must find a way to balance our desperate need for connection with our modern expectation of boundaries. It is a very delicate tightrope walk between the demands of the tribe and the needs of the individual. And interestingly, some modern trends are subconsciously trying to recreate that ancient campfire dynamic. Why do you think co-working spaces and bustling coffee shops are so incredibly popular right now? People actually pay money to go sit in a noisy room full of strangers just to feel the energy of the pack. We put on headphones to create a private mental space, but we still crave the physical presence of the group. It is the exact inverse of what our rugged ancestors did. They had physical closeness and created mental distance. We have physical distance and desperately seek simulated closeness. We play ASMR videos of people whispering just to feel like someone is near us before we fall asleep. We watch streamers on Twitch for hours to simulate the feeling of hanging out in a shared living room. Deep down in our primal DNA, the ancient hunter-gatherer is constantly screaming for its lost tribe. The primal human brain does not understand drywall, strict property lines, or modern noise ordinances. It only instinctively understands that separation means danger, and togetherness means absolute safety. So, the next time you feel a crushing wave of loneliness in your private, quiet bedroom, remember this truth. You are experiencing the ultimate evolutionary mismatch of the 21st century. Your biology is perfectly adapted for a world that permanently ceased to exist 10,000 years ago. The walls that supposedly protect you are the exact same walls that actively imprison you. This isn't to say we should abandon our comfortable homes and start sleeping in giant piles in the local park. Obviously, nobody wants to give up indoor plumbing, cool air conditioning, or a sturdy locking bathroom door. But we must honestly acknowledge the profound psychological sacrifice we made in the name of human progress. Privacy is a beautiful, deeply necessary privilege in the modern world, but it is a terrible master. We must intentionally engineer brief moments of vulnerability and messy human connection back into our daily lives. We need to invite people into our spaces, tear down our emotional fences, and stop demanding absolute perfection from others. We must learn to tolerate the friction of community, because that very friction generates the necessary warmth of belonging. The story of human privacy is a tragic irony of epic historical proportions. For nearly 300 millennia, humans were completely deprived of solitude, yet they were never truly alone. They shared their food, their deepest fears, their triumphs, and even their most intimate moments in the shadow of the pack. They survived the absolute harshest environments on Earth, not through individual strength, but through unbreakable communal bonds. Then, in a brilliant stroke of architectural genius, we invented walls to officially claim our independence. We built houses, then castles, then massive skyscrapers, dividing ourselves into perfectly neat, lonely little boxes. We gained the supreme right to close the door on the world, but we tragically forgot how to open it back up. We achieved absolute privacy for everyone, and it ironically cost us our fundamental sense of belonging. We are undoubtedly the most physically secure, technologically advanced, and well-fed humans to ever walk the earth. Yet, we are also the most painfully isolated and depressed generation in the entire history of our resilient species. The ancient humans didn't need to aggressively hide their intimacy, because their entire lives were an act of shared existence. They understood something fundamentally true that we have completely lost sight of in our frantic race for personal space. True safety does not come from locking others out. It comes from deeply knowing they have your back. So, cherish your private room, enjoy your locked door, and fully appreciate your peaceful personal space. But never forget for a second that you are a tribal creature stranded in a deeply individualistic, lonely world. Reach out to someone, aggressively break the silence, and finally dare to be a little less private today. Because the real secret isn't how our ancestors managed to hide their intimacy from the watchful tribe. The real mind-blowing secret is that they never felt the need to hide their true selves from each other. We foolishly built walls to keep the outside monsters away, not realizing the most dangerous monster was the isolation growing inside. And until we actively learn to reconnect with one another, we will always be haunted by the ghosts of our unbroken ancient tribe.